Hello and welcome to the Tonearm, where we connect you with the people and ideas moving culture forward. I'm your host, Lawrence Purrier. Today we're putting the Tonearm's needle on John Mlynczak, President and CEO of the National Association of Music Merchants, or NAMM, the Music, Sound, and Event Industries Trade Association. Think of NAMM this way. They represent the companies who make the tools that your favorite music artists use to create their work. John has spent years at places like Hal Leonard and PreSonus Audio, working at the place where music and education meets technology. He built curricula, managed platforms, and taught teachers how to use tech in their classrooms. Now he runs an organization that's rethinking what a trade show means when the music industry has gone digital. NAMM just celebrated 125 years, but John is not interested in nostalgia. He's asking harder questions about how people discover instruments, how they learn to play them, and why gathering in person still matters when you can order anything online. The NAMM Show draws tens of thousands of people to Anaheim every January, this January 20th to 24th to be exact. And the numbers behind those crowds tell a story about content, influence, and how musicians connect with their gear today. We talk about John's shift from teaching in Louisiana to shaping industry strategy, why music advocacy needs to be offensive rather than defensive, and what happens when trade shows have to prove their value in real time. Here's John Mlynczak. When did you first see how performing and teaching and technology could all work together? Like, does that go back to your student days, or did that reveal itself to you later?
I know exactly when I saw it. I was a freshman. It was the second semester of my freshman year. I was the hotshot trumpet player in college. I was first chair, so I obviously was the best and knew everything. I loved that I had my piccolo trumpet, so I could play higher, faster, and louder and sharper than everyone. I mean, I had it all. I had it all figured out. You know, I'm like 18 years old and like control the world. And I had a professor sit me down, actually a trombone professor, call me in his office and say, "Hey, I want to give you a lesson." And I'm like, "What? You're a trombone professor. What do you possibly know about the piccolo trumpet? I am first chair." You know, I was like every like cocky trumpet player you could ever imagine. Like, if I could go back in time and find the younger version of myself and say like, "Stop, don't be that way," you know. But you learn a lot through that. So long story short, he sets me down and he records me. He says, "Play your solo. You played." I had played a recital for the Tuesday recital. I played for the school, whatever, and I thought I was amazing, you know. And he sits me down, he records me, and he plays it back half tempo, slows it down half speed, so it's down an octave. And what I heard in my head as a trumpet player of this, it was like the Foch concerto. Like, I sounded beautiful. I'm light. I'm articulate. I'm light. It sounded like half tempo. It sounded like Charlie Brown's parents were drunk and high having an argument. It was like, blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, that sounds horrible. He's like, "Do you hear that every articulation has this pop and then the air compresses and then the note goes flat at the end? Listen again. Whoa, whoa, whoa." And I'm like, what do you know? Who's going to record me and play me back half tempo? And I was such a cocky little trumpet player. And he looks at me and he says, "No, John, I have to play it back half speed so you can hear what we hear all the time as your professors. Your ears don't hear it." So you ask about a moment of performance technology and teaching locked. And said, technology will help me learn to be a better performer and train my ears. So I went out that day, and this was 2002. So I went and bought a little Sony MiniDisc recorder, a little microphone, 600 batteries, because that microphone burnt through a battery in about an hour, you know? And I would start practicing doing nothing but recording myself and listening, and put the MiniDisc in the back of the hall and play and listen, and just transformed immediately. We have to use technology as a teaching tool to make ourselves better and use that feedback loop.
That's phenomenal. And it foreshadows a lot of the other themes I want to probe with you in a few minutes. The related question that I wanted to ask you, so that's your sort of personal epiphany moment. I'm curious what your years as an educator taught you Like, how do students actually learn music? Like, what did you observe there? Because that seems like that your answer there sort of illustrates one way, right? Like you can learn what's on the paper.
Hmm.
You can slow down other people's solos or transcribe them and all that other stuff. But that was a pretty powerful moment that there was a tool missing there for you. And I'm curious, what you've learned about how students actually learn.
Everyone learns differently. Most people don't learn by a teacher standing in front of them telling them what they need to do. They learn by a teacher inspiring them to want to have the drive to go figure out how they learn and to see the successes of that. And so, as an educator, I really realized very quickly that it's not my job to say, you're flat, you're sharp, play this, push in, pull out, play. It's a matter of like inspiring students to why practice, not because you have to do a practice record, your parents have to sign it for a grade. It's like, how do you motivate them? Positive reinforcement, praise, get them on stage, get them that bug of music making, but, and give them tools. And of course, back to like technology, I was lucky to be teaching at a time where it was really easy to, give students like use technology as a tool to like record yourself and listen and see how great that is and share it with a friend and get feedback. And so I think that's really what it came down to, is inspiring students to want to learn, but then use every tool available so they can teach themselves and find feedback loops and find ways of improvement when they're on their own without a teacher next to them at all times.
Related to that, could you tell me a little bit about what was the curriculum and the coursework that you created in Louisiana around music and technology?
I had got into recording for personal reasons. Then I realized, oh, I know how to record and set up microphones. I was recording ensembles and recording solo and piano. It's kind of a side gig because as a musician, we do 20 side gigs as kind of the way you do it. When I started teaching, one end, I was teaching band, choir, elementary, all of the normal things and lessons after school, et cetera. But I wanted to like start teaching recording. So I started thinking I was teaching how to record. I brought in my microphones, my interface, my computer, my Cubase, all that stuff. But what happened is, as the students say, what happened was the students were so interested in like creating music and they would like, sit at my computer and start pulling in loops and stuff. So
Hmm.
the curriculum I started teaching organically was just more music creation. I thought I was starting by teaching how technology works. This is a preamp. This is a microphone. This is how you, but what happened is they just wanted to create music and they had the tools to do so. So we were lucky enough to have, laptop carts. And here we are in 2008, 2009, and you have GarageBand standard on Mac laptops. So I'm like, hey, I can just get the laptop cart and everyone can have a creation tool. Let's drag loops and let's do ABA form or let's do whatever. And so that's where like the curriculum really evolved around what the kids really love to do. And I also learned that like giving people space to just create accelerated that. So it ended up after probably, everything takes 3 years. So after the third year, I had really fallen into this, when education, it was called project-based learning. And it's all, every education is an acronym and a buzzword. So PBL was all the thing. And it was right. But what it really was is like, I would give a 2-week project about make a song with this sound or so many sounds or something inspires kids and just give them the freedom to go and play in a sandbox and get messy. Creativity is messy, so the curriculum evolved out of that. And the biggest trick for me, which made me like a presenter for technology all over, was how to assess technology. Because for me as a musician, we know how to assess. You count how many wrong notes you had in your jury. You missed a note, you didn't play this, you didn't do this right. It's sort of like ticking off mistakes, which, by the way, is not really a great way to motivate anyone to do something. We're counting your mistakes. Don't mess up. Hate yourself when you do it in the moment. That's the kind of things that get in your head as a performer. But in creativity, you can't do that. You can't be like, you got to let people just emote and have fun and play. And so figuring out how to like assess something that a student worked on for 2 weeks and do it in a really positive way that's not necessarily like, well, you didn't use 3 tracks or this note doesn't fit in, but really like positively praise and get them to keep wanting to put out work. That clicked for me. So it was assessment, project-based, and then that just took off.
What did you mean when you said everything takes 3 years?
I always say when you're trying something new, the first year you're trying it the way you think you're doing it, and then you're listening. The first year of anything, any big initiative, you should be listening the first year. You should have a hypothesis, but just listen. And the second year you test, you try. And then the third year, you really have an idea to like understand how it's going to work. So like building a curriculum, first year, I tried to do it my way. I'm going to teach you everything I know about recording and technology and how it works. Then I realized, well, the kids actually want to do this. So the second year I started experimenting. What do you want to do? Letting the kids kind of drive, organic, figuring out some things. And by the third year, it's like, I now see how this is going to work. Let me implement it a different way. And it starts to take off. Same with the evolution. I mean, once we get into the NAMM side, it's the same thing. Like I'm in my third year at NAMM, and we really now, it's the same thing, just being patient.
Tell me a little bit about that tension point when the technology is really serving music education, when it's getting in the way, right? It's just a thing. It's a bell and a whistle. It's not really a tool in the toolkit.
Yeah, there's definitely, with technology and even with like gear as a musician, sometimes we get so gear focused. Like as a trumpet player, everyone has the box of mouthpieces and you collect all this gear.
Yeah.
I think technology can do the same thing where, it's whether it's I need these plugins or I have to figure out how this works, or we start creating music out of just like trying to use a tool instead of just using our ears and saying, I want to make something that sounds really good. And I don't actually have to use 80 effects on this track. I don't have to use every possible plugin. I just need to make something that sounds good. And to me, there's always been an arc of you sort of like the pendulum swings way too far and I'm using every piece of tech I possibly can. And then you realize, you know what? People just like good music. And so that's just a learning experience I think we all have.
It's interesting. I speak to a lot of people either who are educators or are artists who, like you said, have a in air quotes day job as an educator because it's part of what you do now, or people who are working in more mission-based roles around music education. And there really seems to be a shift over the last, let's call it roughly 20 years, maybe a little less, just getting kids up and running and playing. Like when I was a kid, when I took piano lessons, I don't think I was allowed to touch the piano for a year, maybe more. I had to sit there with the book and draw notes, and there was zero fun. And now it seems to be much more about put instruments in the kids' hands, get them making noise.
Yes, and I think there's two reasons for that at least. I mean, one is, we're competing with instant gratification. You pick up a video game, you're off and running, you're doing it. There's so many other things that students can do these days that have instant gratification, that trying to say, sit down and learn all this theory and practice this very rigid technique before you can go to your friends, and spend years before you can go to your friends and say, look, I can play a song. That we just can't compete in that world. We're going to lose music makers. So I think one thing is just the evolution of competing with instant gratification, that we've realized that look, if we just get that kid to learn a song and then go to all their friends and play a song and they say, wow, that's cool. Then they'll come back and say, I want to learn more songs. Well, great. Well, while we learn more songs, let me show you this technique that's going to help you do that. So to my second point, I think we've also learned that using getting people going quickly and getting them out there and just experiencing the love and joy of something, because we're as a musicians and as our industry, we're passion driven. And same with fitness. If you're a runner or you like to work out or whatever, you have to get up and hit the pavement every day. You have to tell yourself, I want to do this today. Same with music. I have to want to play. I have to want to create. And so we need to drive that in kids sooner. Because if we do nothing in education, but just plant that I want to create every day, then the adult's going to create every day. And you can talk really long term in some ways. And we've seen this in other countries, especially in China right now. We spent generations forcing music very rigidly. Now, when they're not forced to play music, what do? Oh, thank God I don't have to do that anymore, because that was forced and strenuous. So I think it's a good lesson to get out there and just focus on doing. I'll tell you a funny story. My other passion is sailing, and I started teaching sailing because I'm such a teacher at heart. And I was teaching, it was a bunch of instructors would go out and we'd all take a group. I realized that people always wanted me to be their teacher, and they're like, oh, my students were always happy. I realized that we'd all go out, I'd be on the boat, and we'd be 10 minutes, we're on the water. And everyone else is back at the dock. Okay, this is a shroud, and this is a halyard, and this line does this, and here's how to use the winch. And they're over explaining every component, where I'm just like, all right, let's go sailing. We'll figure it out as we go. Let's just go. Get on the water, feel the air, catch the bug. But I learned that being a music teacher. It's the same thing as teaching. Get out there, catch the bug, find the love of what you're doing, and then you create a thirst for knowledge, and then everyone's like, cool, I love this. Tell me how that thing works. Tell me how to play it this way.
Yeah. I think we all know the narrative of music and arts education being under such pressure in this country, right?
Yeah.
But there's all these, and this isn't just limited to music and the arts, but there's all these new ways to learn, whether it's YouTube or, these learning platforms that you could pay a monthly fee for and get master classes, and so much peer learning through online communities. And I'm wondering, like, what is that? How does that make you think? I understand that none of it can replace, one form of learning may not replace another, but I'm curious how you think about what's it like, and what are the opportunities for a student now who wants to learn an instrument? Are we in a good place because of those other things, or are we still fundamentally, are we losing something because of because of cuts and those other pressures?
Yeah. I mean, and there's two questions here. One is like just the idea of like cutting music or cutting the arts and what we should be doing in school. But I firmly believe, first of all, that we should be using every tool imaginable, every tool at our disposal. We should be exposing students to, and what we should be really teaching. And I'll even go as high level as just education in general, not just music education. Today, especially today, but I think this existed 5 decades ago, but especially today, as fast as technology and tools move, we're preparing students to thrive in a world that doesn't exist yet. The college students today did not have AI when they were at elementary school and middle school, or maybe even high school. They're graduating college, they're going into a workforce, trying to figure out how to use tools that didn't exist their entire education career. And that's not changing. That's going to be the future. And so I think the education's sole purpose, back to like motivating people, we as a society, I firmly believe, need to think of education as creating better humans, creating strong social skills, giving people the tools and ability to adapt and learn how they learn, and teaching them how to embrace new and tools in every possible way, knowing that they're going to leave our classrooms, leave our colleges, have to go out in a workforce and adapt and keep learning to things that we didn't have. And I do think when teachers, change the dates on the syllabus or get stuck, I've been doing this for 10 years. It's like, no, you might have did it for once and repeated it for 9, but you haven't actually been doing it for 10 years. I think we have to embrace. And then that's just the reality of the world we live in.
Yeah. What's the role of curiosity in all that, both from the teacher's point of view and, your example about like just changing the date on the syllabus really strikes me. So the teachers have to be curious and be continually learning, as well as like building that mindset in our workforce and our students, right?
I absolutely think so. I think education, and back to like cutting the arts. And yeah, we have, and of course NAMM, and I've done advocacy my whole life, and NAMM does a ton of that too. And we have data and research about, music to the brain and music to social emotional. You got all the data, demonstrates what we know as musicians, that, music does have so many superpowers about, making you a better person and cognitive skills, all of that. But at the end of the day, like, we should be educating better humans. We want to make the next generation better humans than us. Like, I think that's the goal of society. And right now, especially, I mean, we're at each other. We're divided. I mean, we're not really good humans right now. I mean, adults, if you've been on social media, if you watch the news, like, at the end of the day, we can debate facts and opinions and political sides and all that, but we have to be good humans, and we have to like think creatively and like respect each other. And I think that's one thing that the arts embody. Like, playing in a musical ensemble, you have to be a good human. You have to respect someone. You have to have skills. You have to be motivated to practice. You have to show up and support your team. Those are the things that I think should be fundamental to educating a society.
On the music advocacy side, so much of the work is about playing defense, right? Like,
Mhm.
we have to protect these programs. We have to fight these budget cuts. And I'm curious whether there's examples either at NAMM or other parts of your professional life. Is there an offensive role? Like, how do we go on the offensive on behalf of arts and education and that type of literacy?
Oh, 100%. I mean, I think advocacy has to be offensive the entire time. And I think, to your point, like, just constantly getting out there and talking about, when I did advocacy presentations, because I'd go around the states and like how to advocate, for me, it's always about, it starts with the joy and pleasure and benefits of creating and experiencing music, because that's what we feel all the time. And so the defensive tactics are, oh, but wait, the test scores are improving. Oh, but wait, like it's that idea that, and this is kind of a product of like early 2000s, No Child Left Behind, when everything went to like test scores and we got defensive on it. But you're right, like we have to constantly promote the joy and pleasures of like playing music and get out there and just, even when times are good, because that's the thing. Like, and I've said this to teachers before, and I, as in clinics to educators, is like, when do you advocate? And they're like, oh, well, when our numbers go down or when our job's on the line. I say, no, you advocate every day. I just say advocacy is every day. Like everything you do is advocacy. And I think that's what's really important. Of just, I used to tell my students in class, like, hey, go home. This was like shameless, but it worked like a charm. When you get in your car today, you get home from school, your parents are going to say, how was school? And you're probably going to say, fine. Don't say fine. Tell them about this moment you just had in music class. Did this feel good playing this thing? Was that really fun? When your parents ask, how was your day? Tell them about how good this moment felt. I tell my students that all the time. And the parents are like, oh my God, all I hear about is how great music is. Yeah, because I told the kid to tell you, because that's an example of like going on the offensive. Like that everyday moment matters so much. Because if all we do is, grab the pitchforks and storm the castle with data when budget cuts are coming down the line, then we're not actually advocating for music making in the world. We're just advocating for our jobs.
I love that example of turning the children into little propaganda machines.
They'll say anything. The funny thing about kids is they'll actually say anything you tell them to. I'll tell you another example that worked like a charm too. At the end of a concert, the parents would come at the end of the band concert, and you'd have one every semester, and they'd say, that was so amazing. I had no idea my student can do that. That was blah, 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 blah. And they go on, and I say, oh my gosh, thank you so much. But you know what? I get to hear your kid every day. So you don't have to tell me, will you tell me what you just said with that much passion? Will you tell the principal that? Because the principal's not in that every day. Will you go to the school board and say that? I'd flip that every time. I'd say, you don't have to tell me how great your kids are. I get to work with them every day. You just heard one concert, but go tell someone that's not in the classroom and didn't hear this concert what you just experienced. I'd say that every time. Immediately, like people, like the principal's like, oh my God, I got 7 parent emails already about this concert. I'm like,
Yeah.
And guess what? The principal came to the next concert.
Yeah. No, it's really powerful. And it creates a culture and an environment of enthusiasm, and you're enlisting people in the cause, basically.
Exactly. I mean, it's like influencer marketing 101. It's really what it is, it's
Well, a lot of what we've talked about so far has to do with sort of applying creative thinking in different ways, right? In education, in advocacy, and in communication. The music industry broadly, and of course, even retail, has changed so much. I mean, it's trite to even say it, but in your universe, you look at things like the major retailers or the major chains. You look at something like Guitar Center and their trials and tribulations over the years, the shift from physical to online. And again, I think about being a kid, and there were independent guitar stores, superstores, not even just like little storefronts. There were massive places that were locally owned by a guy. And he would, I think back on it now and think, man, how did that guitar store have all that inventory in there? And, we have the direct to consumer model that manufacturers and retailers are going at. What does that mean for NAMM's role and evolution? Like, why does the ecosystem need to go buy plane tickets, get on a plane, go to Anaheim, and get together? What's the role of NAMM broadly, and what's the role of coming together?
I love this question. So I want to define NAMM as the association and the NAMM Show as the trade show.
Please do. Yeah.
2 areas here. So the first part, what you were saying is, when we at NAMM, I mean, we're going to celebrate 125 years next year since 1901, the longest national trade organization, the law. So we're very proud of that. And it's no surprise that music and music industry and the power of music is one of the longest running trade associations. But you talk about like all the evolution, all that's in the middle. And so I think about NAMM as our mission is strengthen the music products industry and promote the pleasures and benefits of making music. We look at that mission because any good nonprofit is absolutely mission driven. all the evolution, whether it's the phone book that or the first web page, or now 50% of sales at least being online, and all the direct to consumer and direct to consumer brands and all of that's somewhere in the middle. And so the middle evolves. What's at the ends is where you keep your eye on the prize. One is we're making musical products that people want and desire to play. And then in the end of that is people desire to play music and want to play these products and get out there. And so if you keep your eyes on that prize and you look back at our 125-year history at NAMM, the middle has changed. The way that, and it will keep evolving. But what we need to do is make sure that we are helping our members, our companies evolve and adapt to keep their eyes on that end goal, which is more people playing music and using products and creating music with it, and not become roadblocks of like, oh, like in channel roadblocks, but no, like it has to be bought this way, or it has to be learned this way, or it has to be experienced that way. At some point, like we become our own enemies. And so,
Yeah.
and yes, like that does mean there's an evolution. We're in a massive period of consolidation. Specialty, like the big box retailers are struggling. And that's not just in our industry. You look at any department store, like the average department store where a little bit of everything and a really big, expensive real estate isn't really, shopping malls are no more. But what you have is you have specialty and niche. You have all these like very specialty shops. Same thing in our industry, specialty shops, local, those are thriving at a certain level. But entry-level music making, a lot of it's a YouTube video and an online sale. But the important thing is that we are working with companies and driving evolution and creativity to say, how do we make sure that people who want to watch YouTube, want to play music, how do we just keep that going? Because that's what's the most important thing that we need to drive. So I think that's NAMM as an association is one thing we do is we talk to a lot of companies. And as we think about member benefits, research, data, best practices, what one company's doing, our members are really passionate about sharing. Our members love to get up. And that's what I love about our industry. Retailers will share their best practices with other retailers. And in an online world, we're all competitors, but everyone has this sense of like, we just want more music makers. So that's a really exciting thing about just NAMM, keeping your eyes on like that. We need to make sure that people are playing music and products are getting to them and not get hung up on the how in the middle. Let that evolve as needed. But to your point about the NAMM show, that's the question. What's the purpose of a trade show in 2026? And again, I have the same answer. You look at the purpose of a trade show. Trade shows are actually thriving. I'm going to the Trade Show Executive Conference next week. The top 100 trade shows around the country, and we'll see data. Trade shows as a model, people want to get together. They want to experience like interests. People want to gather. That is just human fact. We want to gather. We want to express ourselves with art and music. That is as ancient as time. But what's evolved is what needs to evolve in the trade show is what the specific ROI is. So if a trade show is only about, the one time of year where, back before the internet, a trade show was the one time of year where you could set up products, find retail companies to buy your products, write orders, press hard to get through all 4 carbon copies. You take the yellow, I'll take the white, that type thing. That's over. Those days are over. But the value of a trade show, why do people want to gather? It's still about audience engagement and audience excitement. It's still about 1 + 1 = 3. But the question is, who are the 1 + 1? So it's, yes, the idea, when I hear like trade shows are dead, it's like, well, the NAMM show is not the only time all year that people can write one order or find a new retailer or see a product. That concept of the trade show is long gone, even pre-COVID. But what is important and what we keep our eyes on is, why does this audience want to see this audience? So we look at the NAMM show as audience value and figuring out, why does an exhibitor want to see their retail or their suppliers or their distributors or their endorsed artists or new artists or social influencers or educators? What's the value in each of those chains? And how do we make sure that that person showing that product gets the value from each? And that's where the NAMM show has really thrived. And that's why the NAMM show continues to be relevant and exciting, and companies are still investing a lot, because what they're getting is, it's not just one retail audience, but it's multiple audiences. And the challenge for us as the NAMM show organizers is, we need to make sure that the value that's slightly different for each audience is there, and that it's communicated.
The Tonearm will be right back after this break.
After listening to this episode, head to thetonearm.com, our online journal covering unexpected music and culture. On the Tonearm, you'll find recent profiles on music producer and MiniDisc impresario Kramer, Sao Paulo-based folk pop sensation Sessa, experimental cellist and sound artist Kieran McElwain, and so much more. And while you're there, be sure to subscribe to our email newsletter, Talk of the Tonearm. That's thetonearm.com. The Tonearm, putting a needle on the cultural wax.
And now, back to the Tonearm. To the extent that you know, and you may not given the length of your tenure so far, if I could go back in time, let's say in 25-year intervals, all the way back to 1901, would I see a change in the makeup of the audience at NAMM?
Absolutely.
Like the mix of stakeholders? And what's the stakeholder mix look like today?
Oh yeah, you would absolutely. We actually, it's funny. We look at the mix constantly, like the pie chart of who's at NAMM. You know, again, we'll go back to like 1950 because we have, you know, those shows. I mean, it was very much it was retail and supplier and distributor. I mean, it was pure trade. Then you get the rise of, you know, more suppliers, and international starts to grow. 80s, 90s, you had international there. That's why the winter market show, we had a summer market and a winter market. That's what NAMM was 60, 75 years ago.
Yeah.
And the summer show was bigger than the winter show. It was summers in Chicago. But as international became stronger, so you start international growth, and all of a sudden the Anaheim show becomes bigger because you have more international audience. Then you have more artists coming in and more promoting products. And that really drove it. And January became a super important time because artists are off the road. And it's a good time for the industry to travel after Q1. So eventually that evolution, you know, now you're in the early 2000s, the evolution of audience growth in 2010 to 2020 was also like this crossroad strategy in NAMM. We know we are MI, but what about pro audio? What about live sound? What about touring? What about event safety? That was the growth of what we, you know, in a real estate standpoint, called the ACC North, the North Hall, where you have all the pro audio live sound speakers. But that was a huge boom. So we need to own the stage, not just the instrument and the accessory. We want the stage at NAMM. And that's when you have sound, lights, all of that. And that was a big boom. And the boom we're having now is influencers. The entire world of like, people are there to capture a product and tell the entire world what this product is and how it works. And so this massive news. So it's the trade show evolution, to your question about 25-year increments. It's completely audience evolution. But the fundamental, and that's why I get kind of defensive. People are like, oh, trade shows are dead. It's like, no. The traditional, the ROI from 25 years ago is different than the ROI today. People want to gather. Trade shows are alive and thriving. But trade shows that evolve and understand who is at the show and who wants to gather and what they get from each other, that's why trade shows thrive. So that's our biggest audience right now. This whole influencer creator area is key. And back to your evolution of the world, in an online world, I have the opportunity, a really gracious opportunity, to give a presentation at the Trade Show Executive Conference next week on this, that, you know, our evolution is, you know, why exhibit at the NAMM Show? We don't sell booths. We've evolved to like, we don't think about selling booths. That's real estate. That's a tape measure and carpet. We sell brand experiences. That's what we sell, brand experiences. People want their brand to be experienced by their suppliers, their buyers, their retailers, influencers, artists. They want their brand to have it to be experienced. And what we generate, we don't generate orders. I mean, people do write orders at the NAMM Show. We know that, but they can write orders all year round too. We generate brand demand. That's where we focus on. We sell brand experiences and we generate brand demand. And the way we've done that the past 3 years is focusing on how many actual views of content around products have been generated from the NAMM Show. In 2023, that was about 9.5 million views of content. In 2024, that was just over 20 million views of content. And in 2025, we generated 39.4 million views of content created around products at the NAMM Show. That's brand demand. That's brand experience.
I'm curious about how the pandemic and the sort of virtualization of so much impacted NAMM. And I feel like a lot of those statistics you just quoted may speak to the fact that there's more consumption and online audience. Was there anything that NAMM took through how it had to adapt during the pandemic years that actually stuck? Was there something valuable that came out of that? Or was it really like, we just need to rush to get back to Anaheim?
I do think the initial, and in the moment of, I call it pandemic panic. I mean, and we went through some stuff, right? I remember like 2 weeks flatten the curve, and next thing you know, like we're in lines getting shots at like stadiums, and there's just like a weird time for everyone. So like living through it, it was like we just got to get back to normal. Remember the back to normal days? So yes, the rush to get back to January Anaheim was in the moment. But to your point, what we learned was so valuable because not having the trade show in 21 and then having to move it based on California's gathering dates throughout 22 and 23, it really, forced us when people took NAMM Show out of their budgets and out of, we skipped that year,
Oof.
it immediately, for the first time in decades, we had to answer the question to the industry, why add this expense? Why come? Versus like, why do it again? Because the NAMM Show is great. Everyone that leaves the NAMM Show can't wait for the next NAMM Show. That's the beautiful thing. Like the NAMM Shows are so much fun, but when you took that away, and what it forced our organization to do is have to answer that question. Why come to the NAMM Show? Well, because the last one was so great. We don't have that anymore. So what is great about it? And that was so awesome to be able to go and say, like, even down to the detail, every single thing we do, why does it have value? Who does it have value for? So we have learned so much.
Yeah.
And it's funny, the pandemic, like a lot of things, it just accelerated and exposed what already existed. And in a lot of ways, I mean, the pandemic had a lot of bad and a lot of unhealthy and a lot of sick folks and a lot of people died from COVID. It's a horrible, horrible thing. So I don't want to say this lightly that the pandemic helped, but in one way, the pandemic like jammed us through in 2 years, something that probably would have taken 10 years if we didn't have that sort of like catalyst for forced reflection and change. And I'll give you one example. During the pandemic, Pelotons and guitars, baby, like the two things that boosted the most, Pelotons and guitars and keyboards. You were at home. So online learning, retail stores were closed. So the online influencer musicians are not gigging. So they start doing product the boom of like the info, all that happened during COVID. So out of COVID, we're like, hey, we have all these influencers now. We need to make a new badge type. We need to make a new badge footer. We have a media badge, but that's not media. So we went through and started, labeling all this. What we found is as people started like adapting to the new badges, these people had been at the NAMM Show 2017, 2018, 2019. These content creators have always been at the NAMM Show. And in some ways, they've always been using the NAMM Show to create content. But we never knew it was so important to like create a dedicated audience around them and really spotlight the power of that as one of those like key ROI audiences until it all got like accelerated during COVID. And then we realized, we got to do this. But by the way, it was already happening for several years, but we just didn't know it or see it.
That's fascinating. As you sit down and as you work with the team and you have this run up to 2026, if you could sort of wave a wand and change something about how, not necessarily NAMM works, but like how the industry gathers or how learning happens or how conducting business happens, like what would be a change you would love to see happen, that you would love to effectuate, that would ultimately be something that people didn't even know they needed, like an improvement that nobody's asking for?
Oh, I love that quiz. That is not a clumsy question at all. One of the challenges with that we have at NAMM as a product, we're a product that happens 5 days a year, once a year. We have evolved, and based on feedback, we have so much happening now that we're back to 3 years, tested in 24, refined in 25. Now we know this is what people are asking for in 26. But again, it might take 10 years for our industry as a whole to see this because it might take them 10 NAMM shows to grab it. So if I could wave a wand I would like to get 75,000 people in a room and say, listen, here is where it is. And so, kind of force that, like, if they could go to a NAMM show a week for 10 weeks in a row, they would see the evolution and they would get around and see all the change all over. But we're 1 year increments. So I'd love to wave the wand and say, like, NAMM is a 5-day experience, 3 days of exhibits, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. But Tuesday, Wednesday, like this year especially, we're kicking off with intense education, sessions, networking, retail awards, day of service, low end. There's things happening. Like when you come to Anaheim, the first thing, the experience we've curated now, gather and let's start educating ourselves before the hall opens. Let's start working on half day and full day summits, which we're offering this year. And we have specific content available for every audience. So retail, it's financial and marketing. For manufacturers, we have marketing summits. For pro audio, we have live sound training. We have curated for music educators. We have some terrible like music education experience. So every audience has a curated track for them. Like start by learning. This is a curated 5-day event. You learn, you gather, you meet folks, you network. So when the hall opens Thursday morning, you are ready to go. And then it is product, meeting, their education. There's a really awesome curated experience there. And then embrace the amount of music making that happens at the NAMM show. I mean, we have 180 bands at NAMM outside of just what happens on the main Yamaha stage at night. We have all these events like Parnelli's and She-Rock. There's concerts. Like also come and just like cleanse your soul with like the power of like music making in our industry and artists and like take it all in. Because I think sometimes people look at it, especially in the industry side, as a business transaction. Got to go to NAMM, got to set my appointments, got to get my meetings, got to blah, 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 and it goes fast. But it's like soul refreshing to hear music, to see young people come in, to see that joy. Like take it in as a 5-day curated experience. That's what I'd love to like wave the wand. And if I could double wave the wand, I love our industry so much. I love our industry. And I recognize that we are in January. So Q4 is the busiest time for everyone with sales and holidays and everything else. And companies that spend like 6 months preparing for the NAMM show. So I know it's a super busy time. We have, the NAMM show map's going to be released next week. The brand new app's going to be released in the next 2 weeks. You'll be able to go in, like say by November, you'll be able to go in, register for the show, see all the sessions, make your plan, look at all the exhibitors, prepare early, make a plan early. We're putting all this information out early. We get probably like 40% of our registrations between January 2nd and January 20th. Oof. And I get it, but do you know how hard it is for our entire staff trying to prepare for a NAMM show when customer service like spikes because everyone wakes up last minute? Like, oh, I didn't renew my membership in November. Can you help me? It's like,
does the January date, is it still the right date in the modern world?
Yes, it absolutely is. Especially the later January, like 3rd or 4th week. And we've been sticking to that later in January piece. We want to stay right before the Grammys. There's a real power in being like NAMMY week before Grammy week. Like that back to back is really working, especially with the amount of artists that come in. Now with this year with the Super Bowl, right after that, you have artists that are like camping in California for 3 weeks, NAMM, Grammy, Super Bowl. So we have that works. Live touring is taking a break after all the holiday. It's a good time for retail. So it's the right time. It really is. But just getting ahead, I think that's what really help us and help our team. And there's so much to take advantage of. If you walk into NAMM Show on Tuesday and you haven't even looked at the map or the schedule yet, you're going to be overwhelmed.
Yeah, I would imagine you're at a deficit. You have a very specific background, right? Education, working in music technology companies and with products. What do you think that your hiring says about how the governing body for NAMM views the future and what they thought they needed?
Oh yeah, I will tell you for sure because I was in those interviews for probably 9 months. It was a strenuous process. I actually loved the hiring process. It was in depth. It was lots of conversations, hours and hours and hours. I mean, months. And the interview process was all about what does NAMM need, post COVID. It was definitely a comment, and so they recognize of like, education, evolution. Think about what the next thing's going to be. Embrace technology. In a different time, I will admit I might not be the person that's best for this job. But in this time, I think I am. I think that worked out really well, and I really liked the conversation. So I can tell you for sure from the board, from our executive committee, even from our staff internally, like we all embrace this idea of like, let's try. And we're doing it in a big way. I mean, under the hood, you'll see it at the NAMM show this year, but to no surprise, we have spent the last year completely reinventing our technology at the NAMM. I mean, so when you go to register for the show, you'll see a brand new NAMM.org dashboard, a profile for everyone, a company profile, attaching employees to their company, recognizing that companies and employees are all attached in our world so we know who they are, and then a new registration system, a new app, a new map, and all of these work together in a way that allows us to create a really good experience for everyone, but also us to have data. We've built a world now where like we can see, who is an employee of this company versus who are they inviting as an artist? Who are their qualified attendees? How do these people add value to each other? How many people who indicate they play guitar went and saw this? How many educators saw that? Like we want to be able to look at that in a really powerful way. So the board really embraced that. That was part of like the vision. And again, it takes 3 years to get there, and this is the beginning of year 3. But
Yeah,
we have I mean, people will see all new systems this year.
that's yeah, and I understand that the technology product development and rollout it's not measured in weeks.
But we're set up for, I mean, we're now set up for the next 2 decades easy. Like the ability for us to use flexible automations. Like I really, and the team's embraced it so much, what's really excited about. So this transformation of like NAMM, thinking about the next 2 decades ahead, like we should be so highly automated and excited. Like the energy of the NAMM show should last all year. Like someone who went to the NAMM show and with all that's available with AI and everything else, like we have these vision statements. Like you attended the NAMM show. Let's say you went to like 5 sessions on AI marketing. Well, we can look at the most popular sessions at the NAMM show, and that drives our online content plan for the rest of the year. So then we can say, hey, this is what people want to hear. Let's do an online NAMU virtual webinar on the latest and greatest of AI marketing tools. And let me invite everyone at the NAMM show to go watch that based on their preferences. Imagine 2 years from now, I'm giving you a hint of logging into NAMM.org and having, hey, recommended content for you. Hey, did you know this? What about connecting to people? Hey, you should connect with these other people because they share, like, who should I know in the industry? All of these tools exist, and we've built the data structure now to create like a world of like endless possibilities in the future.
Yeah, that's incredible. So something you told me at the beginning is informing the way I want to end our time together. And that is, you kind of talked about that brash, headstrong 18-year-old trumpet player. From where you sit now, what would you go back and tell that young man the most important thing that you could, what's the thing you could be telling him to prepare himself for where you are now?
I know exactly the answer here. We're built on mentors and mistakes. Mistakes are okay if you learn from them. And with good mentors around, they sort of guide you through it. When you're young and you're getting a lot of information from teachers, from other people with experience, do not underestimate or devalue experience. Knowledge is great, studying the book, but knowledge without experience, there are two, like there's a chemical bond. And so as a young, the hotshot egotistical people of the world, I think it's a matter of like, they have a ton of knowledge, but they don't have the experience necessary to grasp. And there's something powerful about that because there are things that have occurred to me in my 20s and 30s that I'm like, aha, that's what that person was talking about 10 years ago. I didn't understand that at the time because I didn't have a life experience to like attach that to, but now I do. And I wish I would have learned that quicker. So save everything. If you hear something, don't say, oh, that doesn't make any sense. I know better. No, you just don't, you might not have the lived experience yet to really grasp what that means. Put it in the bank. Put every piece of knowledge. I'd go back to my 18-year-old self and say, if it makes sense, use it. If it doesn't make sense, save it. Because one day it will make sense again.
Yeah.
And I think for me as an evolution of a leader, when I have moments today, and I am so lucky in my job to have 1 million people tell me what they think I should be, could be, and would be doing. And I mean that. I mean, I'm in a job where everyone has an opinion about what I should and could be doing. And I embrace that. And if I hear something I disagree with, I go back to my younger self and say, you know what, I want to put that in the bank. because maybe that I don't understand that yet, or maybe that's from a different time, but I don't blow off things I hear that I don't think make sense, because I have enough understanding now that I wish I had when I was younger to say, save it, put it in the bank, because it might make sense for NAMM in 5 years. Or I might, maybe share it with someone else that has an experience. So that's the number one advice I give to every young person is like, put every piece of knowledge in the bank and just wait for a lived experience and see where those two click.
It's funny, but as I gear up to let you go, it doesn't sound boring.
It's so much fun. It's so much fun. This industry, the people, the passion, it's so much fun. And you're right. It's always, they're like, people are like, what do you do when you're not at the NAMM Show? Geez, like, we are nonstop all year. In fact, the NAMM Show is like, we can just focus on one thing this week.
Yeah. On the supplier side, what's the biggest exploding category?
Right now, and so we just put the global report out. Right now, it's live touring. Anything around live touring. So like stage keyboards, even some like synths are coming back. Any like thing that's used on stage, electronic music, pro audio, touring is just still so strong. So all the categories around live touring are thriving. And even with all the tariff and everything that's going on, because that's a whole other area we're deeply invested in policy and everything there. But even like that's a category that even with tariffs and increases and all of that, it still thrives because the demand outweighs the struggles of the costs,
Thank you so much, John Mlynczak, and thank you for tuning into the Tonearm. If you enjoyed this conversation, I bet you'll like at least one more from the nearly 300 episodes available in our free archive at thetonearm.com. While you're there, join our mailing list or consider becoming a paid supporter. The Tonearm is executive produced and hosted by me, Lawrence Purrier. We're produced and marketed by Michael Donaldson. Editing and sound design, that's by Terry Graham. Our theme music is by Birdie, spelled B-U-R-D-Y. Thanks for listening, be safe, and stay in touch.